Okay folks, thanks for joining me on another Relive the Music video. So this is a follow-up video, if you like, to my review video from their gig at the Hydro in Glasgow on the 30th of June. So I've taken on board some of the feedback that about 100 of you commented about, and I'm going to express what some of those main themes are. I'm also going to look about what I think is maybe next for Iron Maiden, and then after that I'm going to give you my thoughts on what a future tour might look like, and I'm going to go through my set list song by song. So my name's Ricky and welcome to my channel, Relive the Music. Okay, so firstly, just to address something from the Glasgow gig, which was in the song Wasted Years, which was obviously the final song. So a couple of you mentioned that the timing seemed a little out. I know my cousin mentioned it as well, and I did think that myself as well when I was listening to it, but there was a guy right in front of me drunkenly singing along, so it was quite hard to hear. But yeah, the timing just seemed a little out. I think maybe Simon Dawson comes in with the drums a little too early, just at the start of it. I don't know, see what you think, if you can make it out. Another thing to mention again was the fact that this was held in an arena rather than a stadium for the Glasgow show, and it meant that a lot of people didn't get to see the band. However, I've watched some highlights from other stadium shows and I just don't think it looks that good. See, because a lot of the spectacular CGI effects in the background, and I know it should really be about the sound, but for me, my eyes did get drawn to the visuals in the background. But when I've watched these stadium concerts, because it's really light outside, this was the height of summer, so a lot of the backdrops, they just don't look that good. It looks much better once it's dark. You can see that in the outside stadium gigs, that once it gets towards the end of the set, when they're doing Fear of the Dark and stuff like that, it certainly looks a lot better. Okay, so the other main point I want to address, and a lot of people commented on, was the fact that there wasn't really a sort of tribute paid to former past members. So this was 50 years of Iron Maiden, so whilst we got this amazing sort of 2-minute CGI intro going through the back streets of East End London, and all these like various different Iron Maiden Easter eggs such as Acacia Avenue and Steve Harris's house, etc., and the cart and horses, it would have been nice if there was a tribute somewhere in this concert to previous members. So certainly like the 4 kind of main ones that were there for like the longest period. So by that I'm referring to Paul Di'Anno, Clive Barr, Blaze Bayley, and then latterly Nico McBrain. So Nico did get a mention obviously when they were talking about the new drummer Simon Dawson, but they could have put footage in, maybe not at the start because that was pretty awesome, but a good spot for it might have been in Wasted Years. So in the review video I'd said about it would have been cool to have the sort of flashback eddies, but that might have been a good opportunity to show some older footage, because they didn't really do anything with that backdrop in Wasted Years. There was nothing really happening. It wasn't like the Mariner one where the ships were coming in and stuff. So you could have had old footage in there showing, you know, those band members. I think that would have been a nice tribute and a good way to finish off the gig. So if any of you were at like the Pantera show, they did similar during Floods. They showed like old footage of Vinnie and Dime carrying on, and Iron Maiden could have done that. So I think that was a trick missed in my opinion, and obviously a lot of you out there thought that too. So perhaps that is something they could look to do on a future tour. Okay folks, so what do we think is next for Iron Maiden? Could it possibly be a new album? What do you think? Well, if it's a new studio album, then it possibly could be happening in 2028, and I'll give you my reasoning why. So in 2003, they released the album Dance of Death. 3 years later, they released A Matter of Life and Death. 4 years later in 2010, they had The Final Frontier. And then 5 years later, in 2015, was The Book of Souls. And then 6 years later, we had the album Senjutsu. So it's obviously gone up 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. So this could hint maybe that it's 7 years in between, and Senjutsu was 2021. So is that maybe 2028? And that gives them a couple of years to do the album and mix it all once they finish this tour. Who knows? Okay, so I'll tell you what I think is going to be next. So I think we're going to get 2 live albums in 2026. And we might get them together or we might get them 6 months apart. So it's obviously going to feature stuff from the Future Past tour, which they did a couple of years ago. And then we're going to have stuff from the Run for Your Lives tour. So I think a bit like the Real Live one and the Real Dead one, I think they're going to take songs from different locations and mix together the best ones. From a selfish standpoint, no doubt there won't be any Glasgow gig in there because there never is. And I think the Glasgow crowd deserves one because I think the crowd was awesome. So that would be really good if that was to happen and we do get one. But I think if they were to pick a UK show, it'll probably come from London. So the other direction which I think Iron Maiden might go down, and again this is just me hypothesising, it's just my thoughts, they might have another tour and focus solely on the last 8 albums, so everything from the X Factor album right the way up to Senjutsu. So obviously we had the Run for Your Lives tour, which was basically your albums from Iron Maiden up to Fear of the Dark, with the notable omission of stuff from No Prayer for the Dying, which I think was a big mistake. They could have dropped out Seventh Son, replaced that with Infinite Dreams, and the 5 minutes spare that you get from doing that, you could have certainly got a track in there, and that's you covered off every album. So I think that was a chance missed. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. So what you do, if they do have a new tour, and they focus, as I say, on these last 8 albums, you make sure that there's at least one track in there from every album. And so what I've done is I have gone through every album and I said, right, if I was picking a couple of tracks out of this, what would it be? So I've made up a set list for a future tour, and I'm calling this tour, I was playing about with like the words on it, like what am I going to call this, because you know all the previous tours you've had like Death on the Road and a Real Live one, a Real Dead one. It's like, what are they going to do with this? You've had the X FacTour. So because it's to do with the albums X Factor through to Senjutsu, I've called it the Senjutsu FacTour. I was playing around with different titles, but that tells you all you need to know. It's Senjutsu and X Factor, or you have it the other way around, but I don't think it works as well. So I've called this tour the Senjutsu FacTour tour, and basically every album from X Factor up to Senjutsu is covered. So for the next part of my video here, I'm going through the album and I'm going to break down what songs I'm picking and my reasoning why. Okay, so on my proposed Senjutsu FacTour tour, what I'm going to do is when I'm talking about each song, I'm going to put up some artwork for that song. So where the actual proper song is there, I'll put that artwork up in the background. But there were some songs which don't have any, or I don't think they've got any. So I've actually generated some through using some AI tools, and I think they're actually really good, some of them. So I've described what the song is about and then try to get them to generate an image of an Eddie on it. So let me know what you think of these. I think some are pretty cool, especially like the Lord of the Flies one. I think my Lord of the Flies one's better than the one that they actually released for the single, which is pretty dull. But anyway, here's the songs. So the X Factor album was released in 1995, and this was obviously the first album to feature Blaze Bayley on vocals. And for that reason alone, I think it was quite hard for a lot of fans to digest, because so used to hearing Bruce Dickinson's air raid siren vocals on the album and then you went down a different route with Blaze Bayley on it. So I've actually got 3 tracks from this album which I would put on this tour. So the first one I'm going to choose is Sign of the Cross, and I know they've covered this before live a couple of times, but I actually think it's a good song, and I'm choosing it for a couple of reasons. So obviously it does have quite a long intro before it gets going, and it's about sort of 2.5 minutes before it kind of kicks in. So that could give you an opportunity where you maybe put footage up in the background that I talked about of the former band members, and that keeps the crowd entertained visually whilst, you know, we're waiting for the song to kick in and build momentum up. So that's my reasoning for including that song on it. Okay, the next song I would include from the X Factor album is Lord of the Flies. And I like this one. It's short, it's only about 5 minutes long, and every time I hear it, it makes me think of the film Lord of the Flies, and I can just picture Ralph and Piggy running through the forest getting chased by other boys. But yeah, I like this one, and that would be included. Okay, the last song I'll include from the X Factor album is Man on the Edge. So a couple of reasons for this. One, I think it's quite a good song. It kicks in straight away, like after about 10 seconds it thunders along with the guitars, and then it's got a catchy chorus with the falling down, falling down. Okay, so now moving on to the Virtual 11 album. First one from this album I'll include is Lightning Strikes Twice. I think that's really catchy, and it's just under 5 minutes long. And I think the chorus is good, just the way it goes. Maybe lightning strikes twice, maybe lightning strikes twice. Okay, the other song that I would include from this album, and a lot of you in the comments from my review said that they wished they'd heard this live, is The Klansman. So this would have been a perfect fit, obviously, for a Scottish gig with the themes involved. But it clocks in at just over 9 minutes long. And yeah, this is a definite must. You know, this is a really good underrated song, so that would be in there. From the Brave New World album, the first song that I would have in there is Ghost of the Navigator. So it's 6 minutes and 50 seconds long, so it's a kind of mid-range Iron Maiden song. And in my opinion, it's got some good guitar work on it, and it's also got a pretty catchy chorus. Nowhere left to run, navigator son. I'd also include The Mercenary from Brave New World. It's only 4 minutes and 42 seconds, so a good wee one to pop in between some longer songs. Plus, it's got some really good guitar work on it, and also quite a neat chorus with the show them no fear, show them no pain. The last one I would have from Brave New World is the title track of that album, Brave New World. So 6 minutes and 18 seconds long. It's a no-brainer. I think it's a really good sing-along one when it's played live, just with the chorus with the "A brave new world, in a brave new world," and I would get the crowd going. So on to my selections from the Dance of Death album. And I think this is a very underrated album. I really like this one. So the first one for me would be Rainmaker. It's very short. It's only 3 minutes and 48 seconds. But just love the way that starts with the guitar solo. It's right into it. So definitely in there for me is Rainmaker. Okay, my next choice from this album would again be the album track Dance of Death, clocking in at 8 minutes and 36 seconds. So this would give Bruce the perfect opportunity to spout his poetic stuff for this song, but I do think it's quite catchy. You know, it's kind of got that dee-lee-lee-lee, dee-lee-lee-lee. It's a wee bit like sailory type Celtic dancing or something. But yeah, it's a good song, so that would be in there. And the last one from the Dance of Death album, which I'm including, is No More Lies. So I think this is a brilliant song, clocking in at 7 minutes and 21 seconds long. I've put that up there before as one of my top 3 Iron Maiden songs of all time, and I stand by that. I think it's a really good song. I love the Death on the Road version of it when you hear it live. So kind of like halfway through it, when it kicks in, you've got guitar solo in one ear and then it goes to another one and then back. You've got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes of guitar solos back to back, and I think it's really good. I know it's a sort of about a minute long before it kind of kicks in, but I love that song, so that's a definite for me, that one. Okay, so now to my choices from A Matter of Life and Death album, and first in there is Lord of Light, which is 7 minutes and 25 seconds long. So this is quite a sort of slow build-up, which might suit a kind of Bruce in a wee slow down in the proceedings, get his breath back. So the verses are quite slow, and then they kick in a wee bit heavier in the drums, and then it goes back to like a slow verse, and then it kicks in again, and then sort of halfway through it goes into some really good guitar solo work. So I like that song, so that would be in there for me. My other selection from this album would be For the Greater Good of God. So I enjoy listening to the live version of this on the Knights of the Dead Legacy of the Beast live album, which is filmed in Mexico City, and I think that would be a good choice. I know it's about 9.5 minutes long, but I think that's a really good song. So now to the next album, The Final Frontier, and I'm not a huge fan of this album, to be honest, so I'm only having one song from that, which is When the Wild Winds Blow, which is quite difficult to say. 10 minutes and 59 seconds long, that is. Reminiscent of Fear of the Dark for me, in that it starts slowly and it's quite poetic, and then you get the build up and the chorus and the verses and guitar work, and then it closes again on a slow note. So for me, that would maybe be the ideal song, like if they did this on a tour, that they would close with that before going off and coming back on for an encore. So that's why I've got that in there. Moving on to the Book of Souls album, so the first selection in there is Speed of Light, coming in at 5 minutes and a second long. I think that's really good, just the way it starts. It kind of reminds me a bit of like Here to Eternity song. It kicks in straight away, and then you've got a hooky chorus bit towards the end of it. Okay, and the other song for me from this album is a no-brainer, and that's Red and the Black. So clocking in at 13 minutes and 33 seconds, this is basically your equivalent of having Mariner or Seventh Son on there. But I think it's a really good song. I remember the first time that I heard it, I thought it was quite piratey. It was a bit like Yo Ho Ho, a bit of dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. And then you've got to sing along chorus bit with the whoa, whoa. But I think it's really good, and I enjoyed the live recording of it that they did. So yeah, that's in there for me. So moving on to the last album, Senjutsu. So the first one I'm having in here is The Parchment, clocking in at 12 minutes and 39 seconds. So I was really disappointed that they didn't play this in the Future Past tour. I was so looking forward to them playing this, but they played sort of Death with the Celts and The Time Machine instead. So I would much rather have heard The Parchment. I think this is a cracking song. I don't know about you guys out there watching this, but I think it is really, really good. I know it starts a bit slow. It's a sort of minute and a half before it kind of gets into it. And then you get really good guitar solos through it, and then it goes on to the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And then sort of like 2/3, 3/4 of the way through it, it gets Bruce getting into the lyrics, the prodigal has returned. And I think it's dead theatrical. I don't know. I love it. I think that is such a good song. So that's a no-brainer for me. That is definitely on there. Another one which I'm having from this album is Hell on Earth. So I know it's clocking in at like 11 minutes and 19 seconds, and I'm putting The Parchment on there as well, but those two for me are the standout tracks from that album. So with them being quite lengthy and sort of intros before it gets into it, it could give you the opportunity to put more footage of previous band members up there, or a chance to do something with the on screen. But in terms of like the song itself, again, it's a bit like The Parchment. It's a build up, and you've got guitar solos, and then Bruce coming in with strong vocals and the sort of different changes of direction in it. So I think that would be a really good song to sort of close the set with. And yeah, Hell on Earth is in there as my last song that I'm having on this made up set list. Okay folks, so I've given you some reasoning for the songs that I've picked for this tour, if it was ever to happen. So that's 18 songs, clocking in at 2 hours and 19 minutes. So I think that's achievable. I think that's something that they could perform. So I've made up a wee running order for it. So I'm just going to talk you through it and then you can sort of see what you think of it. Right folks, here is my 18 song setlist running order for my Senjutsu FacTour tour. So the first song on here is Sign of the Cross, clocking in at just over 11 minutes long. So because this takes about 2.5 minutes before it gets going, that would give you an opportunity to show up some footage of the past band members, and I think that would work out really well and give the crowd something to look at before the song kicks in. The second song is a wee shorter one to make up for that lengthier one, and I've got Rainmaker in here. And then going into sort of another shorter one is Lightning Strikes Twice, which I think is a good choice. That then gives Bruce a wee breather before we go on to the fourth song, and he can do his poetic bits before Dance of Death really kicks in. Then I'm moving on to track 5, which is The Klansman, at just over 9 minutes long. I think that would get the crowd into it. And then the sixth song I'm having is Lord of the Flies, so a wee shorter one because you've had 2 back-to-back kind of longer tracks. The seventh song, No More Lies, it's a good mid-range song. It's 7 minutes and 21 seconds. And because it's another sort of minute or so slow build-up, again, gives everyone a wee chance to get their breath back. Then we get the crowd involved by going into track 8, which is Brave New World, at just over 6 minutes long. Gives a chance for the crowd to sing along to Brave New World. And then Ghost of the Navigator is my 9th choice. And then we're building up to The Parchment, which is the first real sort of big one in here. This is the equivalent of your Seventh Son choice. That's coming in at 12 minutes and 39 seconds, but a must for me. So 11th song I'm having in here is Lord of Light at 7 minutes and 25 seconds long, but that'll seem a lot shorter given it's followed The Parchment, which is 5 minutes longer than that. And then I think that leads you in well to the 12th song, which is For the Greater Good of God. So although I'm not religious, you're kind of linking those themes. You've got Lord of Light and then you've got For the Greater Good of God. So it's talking about God. So it's 9 minutes and 23 seconds long. So then I'm having a wee shorter one in there for my 13th song, which is Man on the Edge. And that's just over 4 minutes long. And then that gives us space to put another longer one in there at the 14th track. So this would be the longest one on the set list. And that's Red in the Black, coming in at 13 minutes and 33 seconds. So that's basically my equivalent of your Mariner one, which we just had in the Run for Your Lives tour. So to slow things down, we've got Speed of Light coming in at track 15, and that's only 5 minutes long. And then we're going to finish the first part of the set with When the Wild Winds Blow, and that's about 11 minutes long. Coming back on for a wee quick number, the 17th song in there for me is The Mercenary, and that's 4 minutes and 42 seconds. And then we're building up to the finale, which is the 18th song, and that'll be Hell on Earth, and that's 11 minutes and 19 seconds long, and a fitting way to close the set, in my opinion. Okay, so I just want to finish up by saying a big thank you to everybody who's watched this video all the way through. So I know there was a big following of Iron Maiden fans who subscribed to my channel on the back of my review video because I got the notifications from it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this follow-up video, and let me know what your thoughts are on where the band go. So this has just obviously been all about my opinions. So in the comments, let me know what you see the band doing. Do you think there'll be a live album or a couple of live albums from the last couple of tours that they've done? Or do you think there's a studio album on the horizon? And then obviously the sort of fun part at the end was just me talking through a mythical set list if they were going to do that in the future. So just say that they did focus on the last 8 albums. Let me know, what songs would you have in there and what did you think of my set list? So I have actually created it. I've done it in Amazon Music because that's what I subscribe to. So I'll leave it in the description below and I'll also recreate it for Spotify as well. So if you have enjoyed my content, then please give the video a wee thumbs up as I head towards the 2000 mark and tell a friend about it. In fact, tell everybody about it. Get me up to 5,000, never mind 2,000. So until the next time, up the irons.